go me. Okay, I can do this. The next 30 minutes are going to be intense. I just want to tell you guys this right now. We're going to talk about some heavy shit. We're going to move fast, and I want to apologize in advance. I'm asking you to stay with me and to trust me. So let's just lock in right now, okay? We're going to do this together. I promise it might be valuable. I want to start off with a quote. There's going to be a delay of 4 seconds, which is going to be annoying, from my lovely wife. After I gave this presentation to her, she said, "Alex, this is depressing. You have to change this." And in all honesty, she was right. But there was something far more important, which was I was also right. So I didn't change it. So take that, Haley. That's what you get for marrying me. But the truth is, it would be remiss of me to come up here and talk about how the world's your oyster and say all these inspiring things without first addressing the madness that is the world right now, because this is a depressing time. Things are depressing. If you look at the economy, I mean, the job market is not robust. I'm sure that might cause a lot of anxiety in you students and young people. And beyond the economy, like what's happened in Minnesota and Minneapolis the last 3 weeks has been just awful. I mean, words don't even describe. It's infuriating, it's depressing. Beyond what's happened in Minneapolis, I have never in my lifetime seen just like the world collectively be so angry. So if you all feel anxious or you feel down, like it's important to acknowledge that, because that's a reality. I'm also here to say that there is also hope. There is reason for hope. There is reason for optimism. There is opportunity. My grandmother always had a saying, which was "Après l'orage, il y a toujours du soleil," which translates to "After the storm, there is always sun." And if history has told us one thing, we always bounce back. So I'm here to tell you both of these things can be true. You can feel anxious, you can feel like everything's going wrong, and everything can still be good at the same time. In spite of kind of some of the depressing nature of what's going on right now, I'm still really excited to be here. And the reason I'm excited to be here is because I was in your exact shoes in 2013. This is a photo from 2013. You can tell because I have a much healthier hairline, which sucks, but you can't win them all. Here's the rub. I came here as a 25-year-old man. So take your age and add however many years you need to get to be 25, and that's how much more runway you have than I do, or did at that time. And I remember when I checked in, I walked up and they said, "Hey, what's your name?" I was like, "Alex." And they're like, "Oh, cool. Are you a student?" I was like, "No." And he looked up at me, he's like, "Are you a speaker?" And I was like, "Nope." And I kid you not, he looked at me and he said, "So what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm just trying to get a job." And that's the truth. It was a tough time. It was 2013. I felt a lot of anxiety about, where I was in my career and the opportunities I had ahead of me. I felt like I was getting a late start. And when I think about the anxiety I was feeling at that time and at the U of M, it wasn't here, but at this event to where I am now, there's things that I want to share. But before I do that, I need to drop a huge disclaimer, which is everything I'm about to go into is unique to my experience. I have a tendency to get preachy. That's just my nature. But what I'm going to say is not the gospel. It's not going to be true for all of you. So what I will say is this. Hopefully there are elements of this presentation that are useful to you, and hold on to those. But if there are things that come across as dumb, just forget them. And feel free to call bullshit on anything that I say, because you all need to trust your gut. I just want to share my perspective. And I want to address any anxiety that you all may be feeling right now, because there's something true about being young, which is when you get out of the education system, you're kind of on a conveyor belt. And it's a really efficient conveyor belt. It's a really nice one. And it's designed to mass assemble functioning members of the workforce in society. It's really good at what it does, but it doesn't do a good job of planning for individual success. What it really tries to help you do is answer the question, how do I get a job? Again, it does a really good job of that, but what I think the education system fails to do, the conveyor belt fails to do, is answer that question or put that question within the context of the bigger picture. Because if you think about that question, how do I get a job? It rests among a lot of much more big and important questions. Are you familiar with the phrase, can't see the forest through the trees? how do I get a job as a single tree amongst a massive forest of trees? And so what I want you to do, the first thing I want to ask of you is to start thinking about the big picture. As you think about your career and you think about your first job, put that amongst the backdrop of the bigger picture. Because again, this conveyor belt has a tendency to instill this doctrine in you where it's like, okay, I go to college, I have to get an internship because I have to start my career. And that can be, you kind of get tunnel vision. So it's important to consider the context. And what I'm here to tell you right now is if you're feeling anxious and you're feeling under pressure, you have far more freedom than you think you do. And the reason for that is because, believe it or not, adults, jobs, companies, no one really cares. Assuming you don't go to jail and assuming you don't have to declare personal bankruptcy, nobody cares what you do when you're young. You have until about, I'm going to eyeball it here, like 26, 27, 28, where companies are starting to finally be like, okay, like maybe it's time you settle down. But you have this unique opportunity ahead of you where you have a few years to go out and try things and do things and explore curiosities and passions. And you do not get this time back. It's really easy to pivot when you're 22, 23, 24 years old. It gets a lot harder to pivot or try new things or explore when you're established in your career. It's still possible. You can reinvent yourself whenever, but it gets a lot harder to do the older you get. And there's something far more valuable than chasing a career right out of the gate and chasing money. And that is acquiring perspective. The single most valuable commodity that you all can acquire right now is as much perspective as possible. Perspective is it's what you're going to build your career, your life off of. It's going to help you determine your point of view, your tone of voice, your voice, how you treat other people, your self-confidence, your leadership capabilities. You will stake your career on your perspective. And the only way to acquire perspective is to go out and do things. And I remind you, you don't get this time back. So here's what I will say. You're like, well, Alex, I got to make money. I can't just gallivant across the country chasing my passions. I invite you to start, money is important. I invite you to start looking at it as a tool to protect your freedom, the freedom that you have right now as a young person. So don't do things to make money. Make money so you can do things, so you can take advantage of this wonderful time that you have to explore. I was just talking to my brother yesterday, and he was telling me about a friend of his who's a successful commercial real estate agent. And he was like, what I loved about this dude was right after college, he got a job, but it had a ridiculous structure where they basically gave him a loan and he had to close deals in order to pay back the loan. And if he didn't, they would dock him or something like that. So he said, screw that. And he sold beer at Target Field at Twins games to make money so he could pursue his passions and build his career his own way. And I invite you all to look at money that way. It's really hard, it's a lot of pressure to put on yourself to be like, I have to make money and I have to start a career at the same time. I encourage you to look at it a little differently. I am a huge fan of the service industry. Why? Because it offers money, flexibility, and allows you to protect your freedom. But just consider money as a tool to protect your freedom because it will allow you to acquire perspective, which will in the long run pay absolute dividends. I'm going to drop some perspective on you, courtesy of my friend the universe, which I don't know if there are any universe fans out there. I'm a big fan personally because it puts lots of things in perspective. This is a picture from deep space, and you can see all these little stars, and it makes you wonder. I know you're asking yourself right now, Alex, how many planets are there in the known universe? A very conservative estimate is that there are 700 quintillion planets in the known universe, because there might be multiple universes, but that's a different keynote. And you are now looking at this number and you're saying, Alex, how do I contextualize this number? I don't know what a quintillion is. It's hard to say. If you were to count every single grain of sand on every beach and in every desert in planet Earth, you would have 7.5 quintillion grains of sand. So multiply that number by 100, and that represents the uniqueness of planet Earth amongst the universe. And when you consider that planet Earth might be the only planet, it is possible, that has intelligent life, and you get to be a human, okay? You're not a tree, you're not an ant, you're not a slug. You get to have consciousness, hopes, dreams, and opposable thumbs. The point I'm making is when you consider that, it makes the questions, are ad agencies going to like me? Am I going to get a job? Like, who cares? Like, who cares what they think of you? Obviously, if you want to start your career, you do care a little bit. But the bigger point is, like, we have potentially this remarkably, immeasurably rare gift of life. And it's important to consider that because it begs the question, if I have this thing that's very rare and is finite, it will end, what do I want to do with it? What do I want to achieve? So instead of feeling plagued by this question, okay, how do I get a job? What do I need on my resume? I invite you to answer these three questions first. And we're going to get out of the abstract, esoteric nonsense and get a little bit more practical here. But three really important questions that any young person can ask themselves. Number one, what are things that I genuinely enjoy doing? What are things that you do on a daily or weekly basis that nobody pays you to do? Another way of answering this question, what are things that you do that when you do them, you lose track of time? I'm not here to say follow your dreams or chase, those dreams, because that's kind of irrational. But what I am saying here is put in time to identify things that you could be really, really good at. The way that you become really, really good at something is by doing it over and over again, getting told that you're not good at it, getting rejected, being vulnerable. It is a really uncomfortable and sometimes miserable process. But it's a lot easier to do when you genuinely enjoy what you're doing. So ask yourself, what are the things in life that bring me joy that I love to do? The second important question is, ask yourself, what kind of lifestyle do I want when I'm an adult? A shorter way of answering this question is pick like an aspirational annual salary target. You might say, hey, I'd be happy on $80,000 a year when I'm an adult. Maybe it's 150, maybe it's 250, I don't know. But answer that question and then dig deeper. Say, hey, when I'm an adult, what do I want? Do I want to have a family? How many kids do I want? Do I want to send them to daycare? Do I want to be someone telling people what to do, or am I cool with having a boss? Get as specific as possible when you think to your future self in the lifestyle that you want. And the third most important question is ask yourself, what are the opportunities that exist between the intersection of what I like to do and the lifestyle that I want to have? If you're someone and you're like, I love music, and I want to make $200,000 a year when I'm an adult, and I want to do that as a performing artist, that's going to be really, it's possible, but it would be statistically pretty challenging to do. It's a lot easier to do that if you're working at a company like Spotify or TuneCore or Ticketmaster, although I will say Ticketmaster is like an incredibly evil corporation, so maybe stay away from that one. But the point is, you can get creative in identifying, passion-adjacent careers and industries, but find the intersection, get creative. I had a friend who is a structural engineer. He loved building things, and so he has been building bridges his whole life. And he came to me, he's like, Alex, I really don't like what I do anymore, but I don't know where to go. And I was like, don't you love Legos? He's like, yeah, I love Legos. And I was like, doesn't Legos like have someone who's in charge of putting the instructions together, like how you build the actual like Harry Potter Hogwarts castle? And he was like, looked at me like I was an idiot. And sure enough, you look it up, like Legos has engineers. So there is lots of flexibility and freedom and room, and I invite you to think creatively about finding that intersection. Why are these 3 questions important? These 3 questions are important because they don't go away. They will come up later in life if you don't answer them now. And the greatest, I know a lot of successful, wealthy people who are unhappy. And the reason that they are unhappy is because they rushed through the period of their lives when they were supposed to get to know who they were, what they stood for, and what they wanted. I think that one of the greatest tragedies in life is not being able to articulate what you want from it. So answering these 3 questions is really a safeguard for a midlife crisis, because that's a very real thing. And the more effort you can put into answering these 3 questions now, the more success you will have later on in your life. Because again, you don't get this time back. It's possible, it's always possible to pivot later in life, but it gets increasingly harder the more established you get. Because, candidly, I spoke with another woman. She's very successful. She makes, I don't know, she said it was like $300,000 a year. And she was like, I don't like what I do. I want to be doing something else. And I asked her, why don't you? And she said, I'm too afraid to walk away from the money. And that's a very real thing. And that's a thing a lot of adults deal with. And I think answering these 3 questions will help circumvent that reality. Answering those 3 questions can lead you to advertising. And you might say, Alex, I've answered those 3. I'm still interested in advertising. That's how I landed here. Now what do I do? We're going to get into some practical advice. How do I establish myself for a successful long-term career in advertising? And for that, I'm going to turn to an indie filmmaker named Jim Cummings, who I'm a big fan of his career. And the reason being, he started out as an intern at a website called Funny or Die, which they make funny videos. It was a website. I think they're still around. But he wanted to be a film director. And everyone was like, you're in production, you can't do that. So he just started making movies on his own friends, his own budget. And soon enough, he started getting them accepted into the most prestigious film festivals in the world. And he did an AMA on Reddit like 4 years ago. And I was scrolling through it, and someone said, hey, I'm fundraising for my first film. How do you get people to give you money? And his answer was really on point. And he said, I found in life the only way to get hired to do something is to prove that you're good at it by doing it over and over again independently. And I think that's true of any industry, especially advertising. So something that you can start thinking about if you want to establish yourself in a career of advertising is show agencies that you understand fundamentally what they are trying to achieve. And at a very, very high level, advertising is about generating interest. It is about getting people to talk about or notice a thing. And you can all start doing that right now. And you can do it aligning with your passions. If I was in your shoes at this meeting right now, being a creative, I would go up and I would try to find 2 people. Someone who's interested in account management, someone who's interested in strategy. And I'd say, hey, let's meet up once a week at a coffee shop, and we're going to start an Instagram channel. We're just going to make spec ads for brands and companies that we like. They're going to be goofy. They're going to be weird. We're going to make them together. We're going to shoot them on our iPhones. We're going to get our friends to be in them. And then we're going to release them. And then once we do, we're going to get our friends to comment on them. We're going to get our friends to share them out. We're going to tag the companies. We're going to see if we can convince some to share them out with us. We're going to build buzz around this channel. And once we've established it with maybe like 10, 20 videos, we're going to have a portfolio. And we can take it to any agency, and the person interested in account management could say, hey, here's this collective. We made these 20 videos, spec work. I was in charge of managing all the timelines. I made sure everything got done on time. I handled the budget. I worked with the brands to feature us. I handled all the press and PR we got. The strategist would say, yeah, I actually identified all the insights for these spec commercials. I looked at the product and I thought what might be interesting about the service or the product, and I briefed the creative. And the creative would say, yeah, I actually wrote all the scripts. I shot the videos. and I edited them. And if anyone here is interested in creativity, I just, side note, strongly recommend you start learning how to edit. Video editing is such a sought after skill right now. So that's what I would do, practically speaking, if I was in this room right now, because all three of those people would get hired. The reason they would get hired is because they understand the process of advertising, building interest around a thing, the thing being these videos they make. Also, it demonstrates agency. They're willing to go out and do it. And in that instance, you don't need an internship in advertising to do that. You can make money however you want. You could be a server, you could be a bartender. You can make money to protect your freedom, to allow you to do things. The more ridiculous advice I'd give you is to do dumb things, but be a smart person about it. Any competitive industry, advertising is very competitive, but any industry that's competitive, success requires separation from the pack. And separation requires risk. So what I'm effectively saying here is take risks, but be smart about them. Have a reason you're taking the risk, have a plan, have a goal you're trying to achieve. The line between stupidity and risk-taking is like very fine. And the only difference is someone has a reason that they're taking the risk. So what I'm gonna do now is give you 3 examples from my life where I did dumb things and how they impacted my career. And the first one, we're gonna start with my celebrated famous career as a hip hop artist. Yes, that's right, I was a rapper. The year was 2009, the Great Recession. It was a terrible job market. It was god-awful. And after about 6 months to a year of trying to find a job, I was just sick of banging my head against the wall, like no one was responding, like I'd send out hundreds of resumes. And I said, you know, I always had a passion for hip hop music, and I've always wanted to create an album, so I'm gonna become a rapper. And I remember telling all my friends, and they were like, dude, this is a stupid idea. There's no way you're gonna do this well. I remember my parents were furious at me. Keep in mind, this was 2009, like content creators weren't a thing. It was still very risky to put yourself out on the internet. And in fact, I remember my mom looking at me and saying, Alex, if you do this, no company will ever hire you. But I had a plan. I was gonna make good music. And the first thing I did was I worked on my craft. I wrote 5 hours a day. I built out a schedule. I'd write for an hour, take a 20-minute break. I'd write for an hour, eat lunch. And I got really good at my craft. I'm just gonna say it, I was a good rapper. Once I had recorded about 50 or 60 songs, I started promoting them on social media. I was like, I'm gonna brand the shit out of this, and I'm gonna really hustle on social media. So I was tagging all of my friends, DMing them, bugging them, hey, share this, like this, listen to this. And I started getting my streams up. And then I recorded an EP. And I branded that process. I worked with a graphic designer to make a good cover. I built a website. I created business cards. And when I had those things, I went out and I started networking. I met with all the DJs in the Minneapolis area, and I convinced The Current, which is a local radio station, to start playing my stuff. And once they did, I could go to big venues and they'd book me. And once they booked me, I could invite bloggers to come out to those shows and cover it. I started shooting music videos for my music. Suddenly, I had a portfolio that demonstrated that I had generated interest about a thing, the thing being my music. And it was that portfolio that landed my first internship. I remember walking into the room in a sport coat. I had a portfolio of all of my press and blog posts I had written. And the 2 people interviewing me were like, so tell me about your rap career. This is really interesting. And I told them, and they were just like, cool, you can have the internship. And I was like, I spent $60 on this little portfolio thing, and you're not even gonna take it. I was just so dumbfounded. At the end of that internship, though, I was offered 2 positions. I could either become a copywriter or I could work in media. The reason I had that freedom and flexibility is because I had created separation. And I created separation by doing something that was important to me. And I didn't get paid to do the music. I made money so that I could make music. The second example is extremely more stupid. The agency I worked at had this really cool sabbatical program where you could take 2 weeks to do whatever you want. And so I told everyone, my friends, my family, my coworkers, that I was going to China. But I lied to all of them. Instead, I went to North Korea to spend 2 weeks playing ice hockey against the North Korean men's national hockey team. Yeah, exactly. Objectively stupid thing to do. However, I had a plan. This was 2017. If you YouTube searched North Korea, there were only 2 videos that came up. One was by Vice and the other was by National Geographic. No like tourist or person or individual had ever gone and created content in that country. And I saw the potential for a story. So I spent 3 months before this trip guaranteeing that I could film everything. And so I showed up with my GoPro and my like iPhone 12 and I filmed the entire thing. And when I came back, thankfully, I worked with my good friend, an editor, Colin Goodspeed, to put together a documentary about my experience. And I toiled over that script for like weeks while I was working full time. And when it came time to release it, it took off on YouTube. And after it took off on YouTube, NPR reached out to do an interview with me, and they broadcast that across the country. The Olympics reached out to me to do an interview. I became like a C- celebrity in the country of Canada overnight because they were fascinated with this story. I suddenly had this thing that I could point to that I did and created. More importantly, it established me as a director. I remember writing the credits, and I was like, I'm just going to put this up, written and directed by Alex Frecon. And when all these press outlets covered it, they said, writer and director Alex Frecon went over to North Korea, so I established myself as a director. This led me to a new job. I got another job because of this, and I doubled my salary, more or less, all because I went out and I did a thing, I took a risk, and beyond that, this just changed my life forever, this moment. So I will say this, go out and do things to create separation, but also use this time for personal fulfillment. Like, do things that are gonna leave an impact on you, and this was one of them. The last example I will give you was a little bit later in my career, and I wasn't really happy at the agency I was working at. And I wasn't happy because I wanted to be directing more. But no one was gonna hire me as a director, so I would have to make my own opportunities. So I made the decision to quit my job, to start freelancing. Everyone I talked to said I should not do that because it's best, I was like a senior copywriter, and they were like, you need to be a CD or higher to freelance. No one's gonna know who you are. You're not gonna get any work. But I had a plan, I networked, and I sought out my own opportunities, and I got to write and direct a really small commercial for the city of Edina. And it came out like I liked it. It was funny, it was dumb, it got the point across, and so on a whim, I submitted it to the show, which is AdFed's annual award show. All the agencies submit their work, and they give out awards. And I remember showing up, and all my colleagues were like, what are you doing here? I was like, oh, I submitted something. And they were like, you're an idiot. And I remember feeling kind of embarrassed. It was a little bit embarrassing. But later that night, when they gave out the award for the single best piece of creative that year, I won it. And for the first time and the only time in that award show's like 60-year history, they gave it to an individual. And that was a really affirming moment for me, but also it was the ground floor of Cool Story, because I realized through that process, hey, if I can make this thing very quickly for low budget and it's well received, I can do this over and over and over again. And that was what birthed Cool Story's always on social content approach. But beyond that, like, I'm now left with this experience. Let's assume I fail. At the very least, if anyone goes to the show, which is in like a month or so, and they have the big trophy there, like, my name is etched on that. And like, if anyone wants to make fun of me later in life, that's fine, but they can't take away that moment. And it came from taking a risk, and it came from doing something that people thought was dumb, but having a plan of attack. And so the point I want to emphasize here is it's really not what you do in life, but it's the story that you can tell around it. If you can do dumb things, have a reason for them, and package them, that will separate you from the pack. When you go on job interviews, no one is going to ask you how you make money. They're not going to say, so tell me, how do you make money these days? They're going to ask you what you've done. They're going to ask you what you do. I recently, a couple weeks ago, met with a student. He graduated from St. Thomas, and he was like, I spent 6 months trying to find a job, And I was just banging my head against the wall, so I decided to go backpacking across South America. I'm going from Mexico City to Panama, and I'm hitchhiking. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then he was like, I'm also turning it into a YouTube channel. I'm interviewing all of the travelers and people I meet along the way, and I'm creating videos about all those people in little episodes. Suddenly, he has turned this ridiculous experience into a story that an ad agency is going to find interesting. If he comes back from this trip with a YouTube channel populated with well-edited videos that have a decent amount of views, definitely would give him an internship. Why? Because he demonstrates, he would have demonstrated what advertising is all about in shown agency. Use money as a tool to protect your freedom to do things that will separate you from the pack. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. This time is extremely valuable. You can use it to do awesome things. Take advantage of it. Success is very hard because it's very, very simple. And I feel like no one ever talks about this. There are people who get really successful very quickly, and I am not one of them. What I have found is success requires a single thing. It requires you to identify something that you want to accomplish and take a single step forward towards that goal. But you have to do that every single day. And even when you get rejected, even when it's negative 20 degrees out, even when you're sick, you simply have to take a single step forward towards your goal. But you have to do it for the rest of your life. Every day, I'm thinking about those three questions. And every day, I'm thinking about taking a single step forward. And there are days when that single step feels the worst, like the worst step, but you do it anyway, and you do it for the rest of your life. And a part of that process, there's going to be adversity. You're going to experience it. It's going to suck. Everyone tells you to fail, but no one tells you the process of failure. It's not pleasant. Adversity is going to be a real thing in your lives. Don't beat yourself up about it. Adversity happens to everyone. You're going to navigate it. That is not the enemy. There is a greater enemy that I want you to consider. The world is not as it should be right now. It seems like human decency is under attack. But here's what I will tell you. Human decency does not die because it is under attack. It dies when people stop caring. So I do not want you to be afraid of adversity or failure or doubt or uncertainty. Rather, what I want you to be terrified of is becoming indifferent, is complacency. I want you to be absolutely afraid of becoming indifferent about your life, about your career, and about the people that you love. The reason I want you to be terrified of indifference is because that is what is going to motivate you to answer those three questions, to come up with a plan, and to take a single step towards it each day. I do not know any of you, but I know this about all of you. And whether or not you agree with me, whether or not you think it's corny, is inconsequential because it is mathematical fact. Your existence is extremely rare. The fact that you are alive is a tremendous gift, an incomprehensible gift. I invite you to think about exactly how you want your life to be. And after you've done so, to do the most important thing that anyone can do. And that is to take the first step. Thank you.